Forget everything you've heard about cereal boxes and what Disney has taught you. The original fairies weren't small, and they definitely weren't friendly. Some cried outside your window right before someone died. Some led you into a swamp and let you drown. Stick around, and these are the real stories, and today we'll be going through 12 of them. But before we get into today's story, I want to thank you guys so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing and hitting that like button. Now, let's get into today's story. The next fairy we're going to talk about is the Brownie. Now, picture Scotland, a farmhouse, everyone asleep, and every morning something's off. The floor is already swept, the firewood is stacked, the kitchen is spotless. Sometimes even the unfinished farm work from the day before is just done. Eventually, the family figures out what's going on. They've got a brownie living in the house. Brownies show up all over Scottish and Northern England folklore as household spirits, and honestly, having one was considered good luck. They weren't dangerous. You could leave out a bowl of cream to thank them. The one thing you couldn't do was treat them like hired help. There's a whole category of brownie story where this goes wrong through kindness, not cruelty. A farmer's wife gets so grateful for the help that she sews the brownie a little coat and leaves it by the fireplace. The night he finds it, he puts it on, looks at himself, and says something like, "Now that I have clothes, I will work no more." And that's it, gone for good. From then on, the work stops getting done overnight. Nobody ever sees him again. So here's the moral to the story. It's about not messing with something that was doing you a favor.
The third fairies are the Pixie. A traveler is walking home through Devon countryside, a road he's taken dozens of times. Tonight, though it doesn't feel right, he turns left, then right, and somehow ends back at the exact same tree he passed 20 minutes ago. He then keeps walking and sees the same tree again. Somewhere close by, he hears laughter, faint, and almost like kids whispering just out of sight. He realizes what's happening. He's being pixie-led. Folklore says pixies like to do exactly this, confuse travelers until they wandered in circles for hours. And the old remedy for it is almost comically simple. Take your coat off, turn it inside out, and put it back on. So that's what he does. And just like that, the road makes sense again. The laughter stops. Turns out home was only a few minutes away the whole time. Pixies weren't necessarily evil, sometimes playful, sometimes even helpful, but stories like this get something people used to take for granted. Once it got dark, even a road you know by heart could stop feeling like yours.
The next fairy we're going to cover is the Redcap. Not every fairy in these stories is beautiful. Some aren't even close. Along the border between Scotland and England, there's old stories about ruined castles with something living inside them, something called a red cap. Say a traveler takes shelter in one of these ruins during a storm and lights a small fire. Then somewhere in the dark, footsteps start. Slow, dragging, getting closer. What steps into the firelight is a small old man with sharp teeth, long fingers, iron boots, and a bright red cap on his head. The legend says that the cap isn't dyed. It's kept red with the blood of whoever the red cap caught. The traveler runs, and behind him, those iron boots hit the stone floor. Clank, clank, clank. Somehow, keeping pace despite the weight of them. In some versions of the story, The only thing that drives a Redcap off is reciting scripture or some other form of blessings. It screams and then vanishes. The Redcap is a good reminder of how far fairies used to stretch as a category. These weren't all cute. Some of them were just monsters.
Now the fifth fairies are the Banshee or Banshee. A family in Ireland is asleep when someone wakes up to the sound outside, a woman crying. At first, they figure someone's lost, maybe hurt, but the crying shifts into something else, a long, unnatural wail that doesn't sound human anymore. They look out and see her standing near the edge of the property. Long hair, pale clothes, combing through her hair slowly. Nobody recognizes her, and then she is gone. The next morning, word comes that someone in the family has died. That's the Banshee. The name comes from the Irish bean she, roughly woman of the fairy mound. And here's the part people often get wrong. She wasn't usually blamed for the death. She was just delivering the news. Some families even believed a particular banshee had been tied to their bloodline for generations, showing up whenever the death was coming for one of them. So when people heard her, the fear wasn't really about her, it was about what she'd come to tell you.
The sixth fairy we're going to talk about is the Púca. A young man is walking home late at night after seeing friends. Moonlight on the road, nothing else around, until he notices something standing ahead of him. A huge black horse. Eyes too bright to be normal, kneeling down like it's inviting him to climb on. He hesitates, but eventually he does. And the second his hand touches his mane, it takes off. Across fields, over fences, through streams, faster than any real horse has any business running. He tries to jump off and can't. Just before sunrise, it finally throws him into the muddy ditch. He looks up, and it's already gone. Somewhere in the distance, he hears laughter. That's a Púca, one of Irish folklore's greatest shapeshifters. It could turn up as a horse, a goat, a dog, a rabbit, even a person. And depending on the story, it might give you good advice. Play a cruel trick, tell your future, or just terrify you for the fun of it.
Now the seventh fairies are the Leprechaun. Forget the cereal box for a second. The Leprechaun is actual Irish folklore is much stranger figure than one on the TV. A farmer walking through the countryside hears a sound. Tap, tap, tap. Behind a hedge is a tiny old man hunched over, fixing a shoe. The farmer knows exactly what he is looking at. And everyone knows the rule. Catch a leprechaun and he might have to tell you where his gold is hidden. So the farmer grabs him and says, "Show me the gold." The leprechaun eventually points to a tree out in a field. The problem is the farmer doesn't have a shovel on him. So he ties a red ribbon around the tree and makes the leprechaun promise not to touch it. The leprechaun agrees. The farmer runs home for a shawl. When he gets back, every single tree in that field has an identical red ribbon tied around it. Technically, the leprechaun kept his word. He never touched the original ribbon, he just made it useless. And that's really the whole point of these stories. You're never going to outmuscle a leprechaun. If you're going to win, it's going to be by being smarter than him. And even then, he's usually already a few steps ahead.
The eighth fairy we're going to talk about is the Changeling. This might be the darkest belief in this list. A mother puts her healthy baby down for the night. In the morning, something feels wrong. The crying won't stop. The behavior's different. It doesn't feel like her child anymore. Neighbors start talking. Maybe the fairies took the real baby and left something else in its place, a changeling. In folklore, fairies were sometimes said to swap their children for human ones. Maybe because fairy infants needed human care. Maybe because they simply wanted a beautiful human child. Maybe just because they wanted someone drawn into their world. The reason shifts from story to story. It's worth saying plainly this belief caused real harm historically because unexplained illness or developmental differences in children got filtered through the kind of supernatural explanations instead of any kind of care. That's the ugly side of this. But as a piece of folklore on its own, it's built around a genuinely unsettling question. What if the person next to you looks exactly like someone you love, but isn't?
So the next fairy, the ninth one on our list, are the Selkies. On the Scottish coast, a fisherman is walking the beach. One evening, he sees seals swimming towards the shore. Then something strange happens. They climb onto the rocks, slip out of their skin, and underneath they are human. They start dancing in the moonlight. He hides and watches. Among them is a woman more beautiful than anyone he has ever seen. So he does something he probably shouldn't. He steals her seal skin while she is not looking. When morning comes, the others slip back into the water. She can't. Without her skin, she can't become a seal again. He ends up marrying her. Years go by. They have kids, but she never really stops looking at the sea. Then one day, one of the children finds something hidden in the house, a strange skin tucked away. She sees it and knows instantly what it is. She grabs it, runs for the water, and disappears back in the sea. In some versions, she still comes back to visit her children from the waves, but she never returns to her husband. Selkie stories tend to be more sad than scary. They are really about love, freedom, and what happens when you try to hold on to something or someone that was never yours to keep.
Our 10th fairy is the Fairy Queen. A young man is out walking alone when a young woman rides up on a white horse, impossibly beautiful, telling him she's the queen of fairyland, asking him to come with her. He goes. They ride into a strange countryside where everything looks brighter and sharper, almost too perfect. He figures he's only stayed a little while, but eventually he starts missing home and the queen lets him go. On one condition: don't touch the ground once you're back in the human world. So he rides back. Nothing looks right anymore. Different buildings, strangers everywhere. Centuries have clearly passed. Then his horse stumbles, and his foot touches the earth. And in an instant, every year he should have aged catches up with him all at once. He's an old man before he even understands what was happening. This kind of story shows up again and again in Celtic tradition, and it points at something specific. Fairyland was never treated like just another place on the map. It sat outside of the normal time altogether.
Now, the 11th fairy on the list, the-Wisp. You're crossing a marsh at night. No street lights, no houses, nothing but dark, until you spot a light way off in the distance. Looks like a lantern, maybe another traveler, maybe someone's home. So you head toward it, but every time you get closer, it moves a little farther away. You've left the safe path without noticing. The ground's wetter now, deeper, and at some point you realize you don't actually know where you are anymore. Then the light just goes out. People gave these lights different names in different regions. will-o'-the-wisp, jack-o'-lantern, and others, we have got natural explanations for a lot of the light phenomenon seen around wetlands today. But for a very long time, people genuinely believed these were spirits or fairies, luring travelers off the safe path on purpose. And if you followed one far enough, the story goes, you might never find your way back.
Our final fairy we're going to cover today is the fairy lover. Not every one of these stories is about fear. Some are just about love. A musician is sitting by a river when a beautiful woman appears out of nowhere, and she knows his name. And worse, she knows things about him that nobody should know. She keeps coming back night after night, and eventually they fall in love. She gives him one rule: never tell anyone where she has come from. He keeps that secret for years. Then one night, in the middle of an argument, it slips out. He tells someone his wife is one of the fairy folk. The second the words leave his mouth, he hears something behind him. She's there. She doesn't yell. She just says, "You broke your promise." Then she walks off into the dark and is gone. He spends the rest of his life looking for her. She never comes back. This exact shape of story, a fairy lover, a single rule, a broken promise, turns up across European folklore. The message barely changes from version to version. The human world and the fairy world can touch people, can even fall in love across that line, but there's always a condition attached. And the second that condition breaks, the door closes for good.
So put all of these 12 stories side by side, and one thing becomes very pretty obvious. There was never really one single creature called a fairy. You have got household spirits, shapeshifters, death omens, tricksters, sea creatures, devastatingly beautiful strangers, and things that were flat out terrifying. So, how did all of that eventually collapse into one tiny winged creature with a wand? Somewhere between the fairy mounds and ancient Ireland, the darker medieval legend, the sanitized Victorian children's book, and eventually Disney, the fairies got smaller, softer, and safer. And honestly, that transformation might be most interesting story of all.